So the iPhone 13 Pro Max is going on 5 years old, and in this episode, we're going to see how iOS 27 Beta 1 runs on this phone. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Let's go ahead and just begin with a boot up in 3, 2, go, and see how long it takes to boot into this developer Beta 1. What we're looking for to see is, has this beta improved the iPhone 13 Pro Max? How's it looking so far? And I'll talk a little bit about this iconic device right here, legendary Max phone, one of the best Apple's ever done right here. And that thing booted up in 17 to 18 seconds. That's ridiculously fast for a phone of this age. That is amazing. I've seen newer iPhones take 27, 28 seconds to turn on. And while that's not that slow either, and I know a lot of people say, I don't care about a boot up. I do. Phone glitches, I need to reboot and I need it on quick. I might have a phone call, an email, you never know. I could have an appointment for a Grubhub delivery, miss that Grubhub, puts it on a different step, you never know. But anyway, boots up faster on the iPhone 13 Pro Max and even some other phones I've seen. Okay, so we're now in iOS 27. Let's go ahead and take a look at the build number here. I'm actually going to turn off dark mode for the video. Lower the brightness down just a little bit so it's not searing in your eyes. And let's go over here to the software update, and you'll see 27. You'll see it's just going to talk about, this is an early preview of the beta. I want to go ahead and take a look at the Face ID, not because Face ID doesn't run, but to see how the animation looks when going in on the lock screen. And you could see flies in very smoothly right there. It looks very like it's a new iPhone. So very nice performance there when operating Face ID. Let's see if I do it really quickly, if it'll give me a lag, and no, it doesn't. And let's bring erase to wake up. Swipes in just fine. Now when going over here to the app library, I did see a slight stutter there going over to app library on the first one. This is the first boot up, so sometimes it does that. But now that we're in, everything looking pretty smooth right here. I also have these clear icons, and everybody's going to love this, but I'm going to change them in a minute as we look through different sections. So if we swipe down over here, you'll see Control Center comes down very nicely. If we bounce through the different sections, this also seems to perform pretty good. One of the areas I had a big issue with before was adding controls. And let's see how smooth it is here on this phone. And as we scroll through, it looks pretty smooth overall. A little bit better for sure than the previous generations, or even the last one was very laggy in this area. So I'm happy to report this one also brings those enhancements. Now, if we bring over here and we start moving things around, you can see this tends to work pretty smooth as well, not having a substantial issue. If I go ahead and add another control, this also seems to be pretty smooth. One thing I'm noticing already, just kind of running through this general home screen, is I'm building up some heat in the phone. So the beta will bring on some heat for you for sure. But overall, the page swipes, adding controls, kind of just navigating your home screens looks pretty good. As I pulled down that, I did see a slight delay pulling down that clock. But again, this is that first beta, so you're going to expect a few things like that. The 13 Pro Max is an older option with an older CPU, so this phone can definitely get a little bit warmer. It might be a little bit slower than the newer phones, but 27 generally has been running very good on a beta. Now let's go ahead and check the edit pages. So we'll go ahead and customize these icons now. In previous years on the beta, when you would customize these icons, things wouldn't appear properly. I did see a little bit of a delay when going over there on that first switch. You seen right there when I went over to app library, when I switched the icons, that's because it was reloading them. But one thing you'll notice is they're actually appearing. Before you would see like those little developer looking icons where they didn't fully appear on betas. That was annoying. So we'll swipe down here and you see we are waiting a second for those to appear. And I'm going to assume if I was to switch it back to like a clear or something, it might be a little bit delayed when going back. You seen there a little bit of chop there when I did do that. Scrolling down, takes a second for that to appear. So yeah, this is a step behind, I would say, one of the newer phones, but it's not like slow or anything like that. When changing between different sizes, that's also pretty good to go. And I'm going to go back to the base icons. Now, if I hold down here, kind of just go through the pages, that's pretty smooth. If I click here and then click here and click here, hit the check mark, and when now we swipe through, also very fast. So kind of navigating the home screen seems like it's going to be a pretty easy to use experience. Beta 1 is probably pretty good to go, I would say, for people just want to try this out. It seems to be running quite good. So let's launch some applications, see how they look. And you'll see right here, they look pretty good. I will say that. They don't look that much difference from previous iPhone experience on here. For sure, they're looking pretty good. You'll see on iOS 27, we are having a nice little, they give me like highlights of the weather. You can change between precipitation here, wind, and you could also kind of just see a little bit more detail than what you would have seen before. Now open up some third-party apps. I will say some third-party apps might crash just because they're not upgraded for 27, but most of them are running just fine. But you can run into this issue if you run the beta. It's not going to happen on most of the main applications, so I still think it's fine to use it. And what I'm seeing is just a little bit of a slower phone is not really due to the 27. It's more just because this phone is a older iPhone, so it's just like the older CPU, older RAM. That's the same thing you would be dealing with whether you were using 27 or 26. It's not really to the software. So I did see it like a little bit non-120 hertz looking launching Google News right there. Let's go into technology and we'll launch this game right here. And you'll see this is loading up just fine. Let's give it a second. And again, we're going to wait a little bit longer here for 13 Pro Max because this is not 17 Pro Max, but it's going to be generally usable. It's not going to really crash or anything like that. But it can take a second as this phone is not, you know, the newest CPU. And we'll swipe about it there. That was also the initial launch after an update. So if I was to close that again, that would probably load a lot faster. And we'll see it. Here it comes. Yeah, you see, it'll load a lot faster. That was the initial launch after an update. Let's go over here to 3D Mark. And then we'll scroll over here to Geekbench 6 and we'll go over to InShot. And I did skip a few of those games because I don't want to launch those right now. We're just kind of checking app speeds. And if I go back through, we are limited to 6 gigabytes of RAM on here, which is not really a major limit for iOS. But generally, you'll see still running at that smooth 120 hertz ProMotion. This is what made the iPhone 13 Pro Max incredibly smooth throughout its experience, and people can still use this in 2026 and get on just fine. As a matter of fact, this phone doesn't even really feel like it still feels like a flagship phone with actually more premium materials on the build than even the current iPhone series with having aluminum on board. So let's go ahead and run a Geekbench 6 here, CPU benchmark, and see what happens here on the benchmark. I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and I'll be back when it is done running the test. And the final Geekbench 6 scores are in 2362, 5871, pretty on par with iPhone 13 Pro Max, but you'll see it actually scored higher than the average 13 Pro Max. And if we bring it over here to multi, also scored higher on the multi-core score. Let's go ahead and run a 3D Mark Extreme test real quick and see how this phone actually performs in graphics and stuff like that on this version. And all the apps seem to be working just fine right now, so I'm actually pretty happy with that on the iOS 27 Beta 1. And so here is the final results on Wildlife Extreme for the iPhone 13 Pro Max. 2220 on the overall score, 13.3 FPS in terms of the overall average frame rate. And you'll see this is scoring better than 39 to 40% of devices on the market. So that means there's still 40% of devices out there that are a worse performer than a 5-year-old iPhone, which is actually pretty good considering the age of this phone. So that's not bad. So we're going to do a quick speedometer benchmark. We'll do 3.1 here and see what kind of score we can get on this benchmark. I'll be back when it's done running. And you can see we got a final score of 25.6. So if you look at the actual scoring there, it isn't the best out there. My newer iPhones do something like 37 to 41. So they're significantly faster in browsing, but this is still very usable for nearing a 5-year-old iPhone. So I do like that overall. Browsing is doing pretty good on here. Let's go ahead and launch the camera because on betas, cameras sometimes can act a little bit weird. So let's go ahead and see what the launch is like. And so it seemed to work just fine when going through different versions of the camera's features. So we'll go to the zooming, we'll go to the ultra wide. Everything seems to run pretty smooth. So this is good because if you're going to be downloading a beta, you want to make sure that you're using the beta on a version that can definitely run the camera so you can get your results and move on with your day. And this seems to be working fine as well. That's not a bad thing either. So if we hold this down, we're still rocking the older Siri here. If you do go ahead and get the iOS 27 beta and you go to Siri, You're not going to have all those features of the new iPhone, so do keep that in mind for the older iPhone 13 Pro Max. But wrapping it up here, iPhone 13 Pro Max running well. Should you download it? I would say you don't have to get the beta right now, but it's running very good if you want to try it. Also, if you just wait for the public beta, the fact that beta 1's running this good, I'm going to say yes, public beta is probably the better time to wait for. It's going to be out in just a few weeks, the public beta 1. So if you don't want to do it now, it's fine. But if you did, you're ready to go now and try out 27, it's not a bad operating system right now. I will say when you first start, it does index and it does eat some battery at first, but as it learns your usage a little bit and gets kind of like warmed up, it seems to run pretty decent on battery as well. So looking good for older iPhones, and it's not necessarily an individual phone here and there, but when you look at all of the enhancements they're making, the performance with this version, it's a polished and refined year. And it's a rare year where you're actually going to have an older iPhone feel faster than it did on the previous version. That doesn't usually happen. So take that for people who are saying that Apple's intentionally slowing down their phones. So thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you all in the next episode. If you enjoyed this one, leave me some comments of ones you want to see going forward. And if you enjoyed this video, you might like this one as well. Nick here. Be sure to be well and peace.